Hello my fellow hunters. Some of my friends have suggested that I do a new monster list. So I thought I'll do my top 20 favourite monsters from the Monster Hunter series. And so, let's dive in and start with number 20. Shogun Senator, a Carapacian introduced in Monster Hunter 2. Shogun Senator is known to inhabit various of shells, Gravio shells, and Glavna shells, and many others. When wearing the Gravio shell or its regular shell, it can fire a pressurized water beam. When it uses a Glavna shell, it can sharpen its claws. Shogun Senator is one of the most interesting monsters that I fought in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. In Generations Ultimate, they gave Shogun the bleed status and also water blight, which was carried over from Monster Hunter Ultimate because Nergigante introduced the bleed status, which means you have to manage your health when fighting Shogun. For both high rank and G rank, Shogun Senator's equipment is actually really good. It gives you razor sharp and also critical eye, which can be very good when progressing the online hub. Also, when you get to G rank, Hyper Shogun Senator's armor is actually really good, because in my endgame build for GU, I use 2-piece Hyper Senator and 3-piece Devil Joe. The set gives you critical eye, handicraft and razor sharp, which is really good. His weapons are quite decent as well. Most of them have a lot of white sharpness, but when it comes to Senator, his deviant weapons are really strong. They've got a huge bar of white. Also, Shogun's design might seem a bit basic because it's based off a crab, but he's one of the more interesting monsters that were introduced. And also he's a blue colour and I like blue, so yeah, I like Shogun and I'm glad he's coming back to Monster Hunter Rise, Sunbreak. So it'll be good to fight him again, even though I have farmed him quite a bit in GU. Also, Senator's fight is very good. Like, it can be a pushover, especially if you're in the late game, but Rust Razor EX is just something else, you gotta try it for yourself. Alright, Shogun Senator is number 20, so let's move on to number 19. Magnamalo, the Malice Wyvern, the flagship of Monster Hunter Rise. Magnamalo is based off a tiger, and its body is covered in purple and yellow plates, which looks like armor. Magnamalo is capable of creating hellfire that covers its whole body, which is his gimmick. Hellfire is Rise's version of Blast Blight. Also, Magnamalo is one of my favourite fights in Rise, mainly because this fight is quite unique in Monster Hunter Rise, even though he fights quite similar like Senoga, because over time he will charge up his body with Hellfire, which is similar to what Senoga does. When Magnet Marlowe is in this state, this is where he is at his most dangerous, because his Hellfire also changes colour, from a purple to a pink. To get him out of his state, you have to target his limbs that are covered with Hellfire, such as his head, legs, back and tail. If you do enough damage, you will knock him out, which makes it easy to deal with him. But if you do not do enough damage to him while he is in this state, eventually he will do his ultimate move, which is similar to Falsetrax's and Nergigante's ultimate move. He will leap into the air and dive bomb you, but this time he will explode on impact, which normally can cut you. Honestly, his fight is very good. I love his fight so much. Even though he can be annoying sometimes, especially with that tail of his. But for the flagship of Rise, he is one of the most coolest looking monsters. And he also has possibly the best theme in Rise as well. And on that note, we'll move on to number 18. Malfestio, my second favourite bird wyvern. Its design is based off an owl, a nocturnal hunter. Also, Malfestio's colour scheme makes it look more elegant. Malfestio was first introduced in Monster Hunter Generations. It is probably one of the most beautiful monsters in the series. Malfestio has got a unique gimmick in Generations. Malfestio has the ability to produce yellow scales, but are dislodged from its feathers. If a monster or hunter gets hit by these scales, they will become confused. For hunters, the movement controls will be reversed, and also it can produce an ultrasound beam that can put hunters to sleep. Malfestio is one of the most unique monsters that I ever fought, and I wish he returned in a future game, since he's only been in Generations. Malfestio's armour is not bad, I guess, but his weapons are really good. They look awesome, and also they have a lot of sleep. So if you want to have a good option for sleep, Malfestio will be a monster you want to fight. Honestly, he's one of the most best fights in Generations Ultimate. And in Generations Ultimate, he got a new deviant, called Nightcloak Malfestio. Nightcloak is probably one of my favourite deviants. It is essentially just Malfestio but a lot harder, especially his EX. He has the ability to go invisible, just like Comedios. And he's also got a new ultimate move. When Malfestio goes invisible, it can do one or two things. One, it can get behind a hunter and attack them from behind with a slam. Or, it can target someone else with a spiral tornado, which is usually a one shot. Honestly, Malfestio is one of my favourite fights from Generations Ultimate, so I kinda wish that he would return for a future game, since he hasn't been seen since Generations Ultimate. Alright, let's move on to number 17. Zhong Trios, an amphibian introduced in Monster Hunter 4. Zhong Trios' design is a mixture of a toad and also a shark. Zhong Trios behaves like a regular shark in real life. He spends most of his time submerged underwater, which makes it easy for him to ambush prey from below. It is also capable of shooting powerful turrets of water from its mouth. Zhong Trios has got an interesting gimmick, just like most monsters on this list. When he is enraged, he is capable of creating an icy armor around his body, similar to that of Glacial Agnacta and also Volcana. The armor covers his whole body, and it also forms a jagged spear on the end of its snout. I first fought Zhong Trios in Monster Hunter Ultimate, and he is one of my favourite monsters from that game. He is one of the most fun monsters to fight, mainly because of his gimmicks. He is quite a basic fight, but my god, he is really fun. Zhong Trios has got 3 phases to his fight. The first phase is his normal phase, where he'll just attack you like normal. In his second phase, he will cover himself in ice armor. You can break off his armor if you do enough damage to him, and if you break certain parts, you can just knock him over. And then there is his third phase. After you do enough damage to him, he will well up like a balloon. This phase is just ridiculous. It is the reason why he's a lot of fun. When I saw this for the first time, I was so surprised. And my god, it's one of the most best things about Zhong Trios. While he is in this state, he is capable of rolling and jumping on top of targets, which is quite insane and quite funny too. Overall, he is just one of the most fun monsters in the series, and it's a massive shame they never returned in Monster Hunter Rise. Also, I do really appreciate Zhong Trios. I also used him in stories too, and also I love his theme from 4U and GU, the Frozen Seaway theme. It's probably one of my most favourite themes, to be honest. And with that, let's move on to number 16. Thunderlord Senoga. One of the most best deviants in Generations Ultimate, and also one of the most difficult. He hits a lot harder, and he dishes out his attacks much quicker. Thunderlord Senoga is the best version of Senoga. His fight is very similar to the regular Senoga, but Thunderlord has got 1 or 2 new moves which Senoga doesn't have. Thunderlord Senoga's ultimate attack is much different than the regular Senoga. His ultimate attack is an electrical discharge. If you are in the radius of his discharge, it is a one-shot. Honestly, most of Thunderlord's attacks will one-shot you in G rank. His Lariat will, his Tail Slam will, and also his Paw Stomp. I prefer Thunderlord Senoga from Generations Ultimate than I do Apex Senoga from Monster Hunter Rise. In GU, Thunderlord feels way more of a threat compared to Apex Senoga. EX Thunderlord Senoga is hands down one of the most fun and hardest fights in Generations Ultimate, hence why he is my favourite version of Senoga. Overall, Thunderlord Senoga is my favourite version of Senoga. His colour scheme is also very good as well. Green and gold, and it looks really good when he's charged up, compared to the regular Senoga. So after fighting him in GU, and also defeating his EX, Thunderlord Senoga has become one of my all-time favourite deviants. And so, we'll move on to number 15. Godzilla Rag, a brand new fanged beast. introduced in Monster to Rise, the apex predator of the Frost Islands. Godzilla Rag is my favourite monster from Monster to Rise. It's probably one of the most best designed monsters in Monster to Rise. Its design is heavily based on a bear. It is also based off the Namahe Yaki from Japanese folklore. Godzilla Rag has the ability to inhale cold air to freeze its own bodily fluids, and then spit them out to create ice blades on its arms. When Godzilla Rag gets enraged, his skin starts to change from a blue to a red. Godzilla Rag's gimmick is honestly one of my favourites. The fact that it can make ice blades on its arms is just really cool. Just like other ice monsters, Godzilla Rag can shoot an ice breath from its mouth. Honestly, Godzilla Rag is one of my favourite fanged beasts. And he is my favourite monster from Monster to Rise. Also, his weapons in Monster to Rise are actually quite good. Even though they've got terrible sharpness, but they got very high roar, which was my go-to weapons going through Monster to Rise. Overall, Godzilla Rag is just an amazing monster in general. His fight is quite unique in Monster to Rise, since he is using his ice blades against you. I hope in Sunbreak he gets a unique subspecies, and so we'll move on to number 14. Legarichus, the Lord of the Seas. The Leviathan flagship from Monster to Try. Legarichus was the first Leviathan ever created. It is a fan favourite and beloved by many hunters. I first fought Legarichus in Monster Hunter Generations. I then farmed him in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. The more I fought him, the more I started to really love his fight. Legarichus has the ability to discharge and also store Thunder Element, which is really similar to Senoga and also Astalos. The only difference is Legarichus' back will glow and be covered in electricity, and also its mouth will be goggling with thunder. Legarichus has the ability to discharge thunder orbs around its body which rotate, and if you get hit by them it can either stun you or knock you over. Legarichus is my most favourite Leviathan. He is such an awesome monster. It's a shame he hasn't returned in future games. He was supposed to return in Monster Hunter World, but unfortunately he was cut because they couldn't get his skeleton to work. Which is a big shame because he would have been an awesome addition. If Legarichus made it to World, we would have seen his rare species and his subspecies. Ivory Legarichus and Abyssal Legarichus. Honestly, I love Legarichus. He is my favourite Leviathan, like I said earlier. In Generations Ultimate, I use his Switch Axe, which is honestly one of my favourite weapons in GU. So I'm hoping with Sunbreak we will be getting Legarichus. I hope. And so let's move on to number 13. Barrier, first introduced in Monster to Try. This Aztus wyvern rules the whole Frost Reach. Its large amber tusks can pierce the hide of any monster. and it can create powerful ice tornadoes with its breath. A flying wyvern that can latch onto any icy surface, and can pounce on any unexpected hunters. I first fought Barioth in Iceborne, since World Iceborne was my first Monster Hunter game. Barioth was also in my top 10 monsters from Iceborne. I have now fought Barioth in Generations Ultimate and Rise, and I gotta say, Iceborne's version of Barioth is my favourite, which is because I enjoy his fight a lot more in Iceborne than I do in GU and Rise. Barioth is just one of my all-time favourite monsters from Iceborne. He is my go-to monster for testing weapon sets on, and I really love Barioth's design since it's based off the saber-toothed tiger. He is pretty much one of my favourite fights in Iceborne. It's just a shame that we didn't get his subspecies, Sam Barioth. Hopefully we will see Sam Barioth in the future. And so, let's move on to number 12. Comedios, one of the original 3 Elder Dragons introduced in Monster Hunter 2. A unique looking Elder Dragon, heavily based on the Comedian, which is quite obvious, and not a typical looking Elder Dragon. Its design is quite odd and also fascinating. Comedios isn't like most Elder Dragons. He doesn't rely on element or pure strength. Comedios is an ambush predator, the master of the mist, the ancient phantom. Comedios' breath can create a thick fog to impair visibility, which makes it easier for him to camouflage himself. Comedios was the first monster ever to be able to turn invisible. The only other 2 monsters that can go invisible is Lucent Nagakuga and Nightcloak Malfestio. I first fought Comedios in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. He also made his return in Generations Ultimate and also Monster Hunter Rise. Comedios is easily one of the most fun Elder Dragons to fight. Everyone should know that Comedios does poison and also toxic in high rank and G rank. He also has the unique ability to steal your items. If you're unlucky enough, he will steal your max potion or your ancient potion or any kind of consumable item, which can make the fight more difficult, especially in G rank of 4 Ultimate and also Generations Ultimate. In Rise, he doesn't have visibility, which was a massive letdown. In order to stop Comedios from going invisible, you have to break his horn. In the older games, the horn will not break until Comedios has got 20% health left, which makes Comedios one of the most fun Elder Dragons I ever fought. Overall, I love Comedios. He is one of my favourite Elder Dragons, and I wish he was in Monster Hunter World, but he never returned, because he would have been perfect for the ancient forest. And on that note, we will move on to number 11. Fatalis, the first Black Dragon, and the endgame boss of Monster Hunter 1. He is at the top of the food chain. All living things fear Fatalis, even other Black Dragons. Dire Moralis will avoid Fatalis. Eletron will flee from Fatalis. The guild heavily fear Fatalis because Fatalis destroyed Castle Shrade many centuries ago due to the Great Dragon War, when countless monsters were slaughtered to create a new form of life, the Equal Dragon Weapon. A weapon mixed with the corpses of every elder dragon that was slain. Fatalis has caught wind of this and wiped out the civilization from the face of the earth. After this happened, the Hunters Guild put restrictions in place for hunting. If hunters overhunt monsters, it can drastically affect the ecosystem, and then Fatalis will catch wind, then take his wrath on all life. Hence why in the special assignment they say that Fatalis wipes out all life in a single night. He was the 5th and final update for Iceborne, and he's the hardest fight in Iceborne by far, even harder than Eletron. He is the strongest monster in the series. Nothing else comes close to him. Fatalis was also in my top 10 monsters from Iceborne, and Iceborne's version of Fatalis is hands down the best version. He is one of my favourite monsters from Iceborne, and also one of my favourite fights. Having Fatalis as the final boss for Iceborne was a really good send-off. Fatalis also has the best equipment in Iceborne as the final monster. His armor is really strong. The 2-piece bonus allows you to increase the cap of any skill, and the 4-piece bonus which gives you razor sharp and also 100% stamina and health, which is quite powerful, so you don't even need health boost on your set anymore. Fatalis has become one of my all-time favourite monsters, and I like the fact they remade his theme for Iceborne, which sounds pretty amazing. I also like the fact that they confirmed some of his lore, as in he burns hunters alive and melts down their bodies into his scales, which makes his hide a lot tougher, which makes Fatalis one of the most scariest monsters in the series. Also, if a hunter kills a Fatalis and wears his armor, sooner or later the armor is going to overgrow the hunter and be born into a new Fatalis. Fatalis and other black dragons are immortal. Fatalis has the ability to regenerate even from the smallest scale, so when he starts to regenerate from the hunter's armor, that hunter will be consumed, which is pretty dark, not gonna lie. So overall, I love Fatalis, even though he can be a bit of a pain in Iceborne, but I really love fighting him. He is one of the most best highlights in Iceborne. And with that, we will move on to number 10. Phuketphuket, my most favourite bird wyvern in the series. Phuketphuket's design is honestly one of my favourites. He looks really adorable. Phuketphuket is also known to have poisonous toxins inside its body, and honestly, he is my most favourite poison monster. Ever since World came out, Phuketphuket has made its way into other games, such as Monster to Rise and also Stories 2. Another reason why I love Phuketphuket so much is because he plays a big role in the Witcher crossover event. If you manage to find and rescue this Phuketphuket, he will help you fight against Eletron, which is why the Witcher event has become one of my all-time favourite quests, mainly because of Phuketphuket. Phuketphuket was also in my top 10 monsters, so there's no surprise that he's here. He is essentially the best boy, after all. Overall, Phuketphuket is just an awesome monster. He is one of the best monsters introduced in the world. And so, let's move on to number 9. Falsetrax, the Sky Comet Elder Dragon, the flagship of Generations Ultimate. Falsetrax is easily one of the most coolest looking monsters in the series. Falsetrax can fly at high speeds by discharging dragon element from its wings, which act like jet engines, and he also sucks in air through his chest, which makes Falsetrax's design very unique in Monster Hunter. Falsetrax has the ability to manipulate and also align the shape of its wings, that it uses to great effect in combat. Also, it's believed that Falsetrax is the only monster in the series that can break the sound barrier when it uses his ultimate attack. When he does this attack, Falsetrax opens up its chest and take as much air as possible, and then he'll blast off into the horizon, covered in crimson dragon energy, becoming a red comet. His ultimate attack is probably one of the most best spectacles in Monster Hunter. Falsetrax has become one of my all-time favourite Elder Dragons, since I have fought him extensively in Generations Ultimate and Monster to Rise. His weapons and armor are not too bad, but when it comes to dragon element weapons, Falsetrax is the best one when it comes to Generations Ultimate and Monster to Rise. And also his theme is just fantastic from Generations Ultimate. It is honestly one of my favourites from GU. And so, let's move on to number 8. Teostra, the Emperor of Flames, one of the original Elder Dragons introduced in Monster Hunter 2. Teostra is my favourite Elder Dragon out of the 3 original Elder Dragons. Its design is based off a manticore, which looks pretty intimidating. Obviously, I first fought Teostra in Monster Hunter World. Honestly, the Iceborne version of Teostra is the best version, even though I have fought him in previous games. Iceborne Teostra is just one of the most best fights in Iceborne. He is pretty much my go-to tempered monster to farm for decorations. Teostra's battle theme from Monster to World is honestly one of my favourite tracks. It makes you feel like you're fighting a king. Teostra is pretty much the king of the Elder's Recess. Teostra's armor became meta for Iceborne, since you can combine it with Raging Brauchydios and get Master's Touch on your set, which is quite powerful. And also, I gotta say, I love his lead armor, it looks really badass. But Teostra is not alone in this spot. He has a partner. Lunastra, the female counterpart to Teostra. Lunastra was also introduced in Monster Hunter 2. Teostra and Lunastra bond for life, just like Rathian and Rathalos. Monster Hunter World marked the return of Lunastra because Lunastra has not been seen in the Monster Hunter game ever since Monster Hunter 2. She is quite similar to Teostra when it comes to her moveset, although her flames are a lot hotter than Teostra's. Honestly, when Lunastra returned to World, I really like her, especially her design. As you all know, blue is my favourite colour, so it makes me like Lunastra more. Even though when she first came out in World, she did give me a lot of problems, mostly because of her Nova. But over time, I got better at the game, and I gotta say, Lunastra is one of my favourite fights. Even though some hunters really don't like her. But in the end, I'm really glad Lunastra returned, because she hasn't been seen for a very long time. And I also paired Teostra and Lunastra together in a spot, because I thought it'd be appropriate. Since both monsters are often together, I decided to just put them on the same spot, like on my previous list. I'd say you can't have Teostra without Lunastra, and you can't have Lunastra without Teostra. And with that, let's move on to number 7. Gormagala, the flagship of Monster Hunter 4. Gormagala is a unique wyvern, sharing traits and similarities to other elder dragons. Having 6 limbs and 2 clawed wings on its back, its body is covered in pollen-like scales, which Gore spreads in his environment. Because Gormagala is blind, so these pollens pick up any movement, and Gormagala can see his prey within heat vision. These pollen-like scales have a nasty side effect when they get inhaled by a monster. They contain the Frenzy virus, which Gormagala is known for. The Frenzy virus can kill off any monster that gets infected, which makes it an easy meal for Gormagala. When there's enough scales in the environment, Gormagala's sensors become more profound, where 2 feelers come out on top of its head, acting like antennas, and they are the main source of the Frenzy virus. Your main priority is to break these feelers, because when these feelers are out, he is in a frenzied state, and these feelers spread more scales into the air, hence why they are the source of the Frenzy virus. Gormagala is an amazing monster. I first fought him in 4 Ultimate, and he has become one of my all-time favourite monsters. His design is just cool as hell. A jet black wyvern with a tint of purple when he is in the frenzy state. And since he is the progenitor of the Frenzy virus, he has a very unique game mechanic in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. When you defeat Gormagala, he will retreat into the mountains, killing everything in his environment. Eventually, he will molt. You see, Gormagala is just a juvenile, so he will eventually grow into his adult form, Shogun Magala, a powerful elder dragon. One of the most best fights in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate and also Generations Ultimate. Shogun Magala shares the same skeleton as Nergigante from Monster Hunter World. His fight is very brutal and so heart pumping as well. His fight is quite unique. It is treated like a showdown between you and him, because throughout the story of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, he is your foe, your rival. He remembers you taking him down as a Gormagala, so when he finally matures, he will have a hatred for you, which makes the fight more intense. 2 powerful beings locked in battle with one another. when you get blighted by the frenzy virus, it has the bonus that if you recover from it, you get an infinity increase on your weapons for a short time. But if you don't recover from the frenzy, you will take double damage from frenzy attacks. Gormagala is an amazing elder dragon and one of my all-time favourites from the older games. His design is just badass and he's got a very good colour scheme. Gormagala and Gormagala are two monsters that I want to return for a future game because they are both amazing monsters. And so, let's move on to number 6. Brute Tigerex, a more aggressive subspecies than a regular Tigerex that lives in harsh environments. Due to it living in harsh environments with other large monsters, its lungs have expanded, which makes its roars a lot louder and more intimidating. Brute Tigerex is one of the better subspecies in Iceborne, and also one of the best fights hands down. Iceborne's version of Brute Tigerex is the best Tigerex that we ever had. He is much better than he was in 4 Ultimate. He was also in 2 of my previous lists. You can unlock Brute Tigerex in the Ganglands by getting your Rotten Veil region up to level 6. And also if you reach Master rank 70. His armor set is one of the best in the game, before the updates. If you're going through Iceborne for the first time, Brute Tigerex is a monster that you want to farm, mainly because his materials are used for augmenting on your weapons, so you will have to unlock him eventually. I love Brute Tigerex's design in Iceborne. A dark brown with stripes, and it just looks really good on Tigerex. It makes him look more intimidating and more threatening. I also mained Brute Tigerex in Stories 2, if you guys watched my playthrough. He is easily one of my favourite monsters as well. Overall, Brute Tigerex is my favourite version of Tigerex in general. It's just a shame that he didn't return from Muzzle to Rise. But then again, in Rise there's no subspecies. It's just a shame that we didn't get Molten Tigerex. That would have been really fun in Iceborne. And so, let's move on to number 5. Nagakuga, one of the most iconic monsters from the series. Nagakuga is a fan favourite and beloved by many hunters. He was first introduced in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. After his debut, he made his way into every single Monster Hunter game except for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Nagakuga is one of my most favourite monsters ever. Mostly because I first fought him in Generations and he was my first wall. Nagakuga made me a better hunter in the long run, because his fight is very fun and fast paced. So when you're fighting Nagakuga, you have to stay on your toes. He can also make you bleed, thanks to his wings and also his tail spikes. Nagakuga's design is just awesome, since it is based off a panther. And also, when he gets enraged, his eyes glow red, which makes him look really intimidating. Also, Nagakuga's theme is probably my favourite theme in the whole series. And I was quite happy when he returned to Iceborne. But unfortunately, we didn't get his subspecies or rare species, Green Nagakuga and Lucent Nagakuga. Overall, Nagakuga is just an awesome monster, and he is my second favourite flying wyvern in the series. And on that note, we will move on to number 4. Boltreaver Astalos is my most favourite flying wyvern and also my favourite deviant. Boltreaver is exclusive to Generations Ultimate. He is easily one of the most difficult deviants to take on. I have soloed him many times and he has become my favourite monster from Generations Ultimate. Boltreaver's design is just awesome, since it is a mixture of a dragonfly and also a scorpion. When Boltreaver charges up, it becomes a light blue, which is honestly my favourite thing about him, because blue is my favourite colour and it just looks way better on Astalos. When Boltreaver is fully charged, this is where he is at his most dangerous, and also is where he is most brutal as well. Boltreaver's moveset is very different to Astalos. Boltreaver has got a lot of new moves that can instantly caught you. The first one is an energy blade, which forms on top of his head. He uses it like a sword and slams it down into the ground, killing anyone in its path. The second one is a plasma ball, which sucks you in like a black hole. He uses this plasma ball to suck you in and trying to hit you with his energy blade, or with his other move, is slam. Once you are close enough to him when being sucked by the plasma ball, he will try and slam on top of you or ram into you. This is one of the reasons why Boltreaver is one of the most difficult deviants, because he is relentless and he will not stop. He is single-handedly my most favourite deviant in GU. And since he is my most favourite deviant, I also use him in stories too. He is my main monster. Also, I really love Astalos' battle theme. It is one of my favourite tracks from Generations. I just wish that it was used for Boltreaver Astalos, because Astalos' theme sounds way better than the Deviant theme. Overall, I love Boltreaver. I love his design and also his fight. I currently have him leveled up to G5, so sooner or later I'll be taking on his EX, and I'm going to be attempting it solo. And so, let's move on to number 3. Ruiner Nergigante. The flagship of Monster Hunter World, Ruiner Nergigante is the best Elder Dragon in Iceborne. Ruiner is just a badass monster, and a brand new variant as well. Nergigante has now got metallic spikes instead of the regular black spikes. These spikes can be very hard to break, but if you do break them, you can trip him easy. When it comes to Ruiner Nergigante, a lot of his attacks will make you bleed, thanks to his metallic spikes, which he was lacking back in high rank. Nergigante has pretty much become one of the most important Elder Dragons in the series, mainly because of his involvement in the story of both World and Iceborne. In Iceborne, specifically, he was hunting down Shara Ichvalda, hence why he wasn't present until Master Rank 100. Also, a little fact about Nergigante: the spikes that break off from his body are actually alive. Yep, the spikes that you break off are actually baby Nergigantes. When Nergigante absorbs enough bioenergy, he will reproduce offspring into the spikes. So when that Nergigante dies, a new Nergigante will be born from those spikes. Nergigante has got a very interesting ecology to him, more unique than any other Elder Dragon. I love Nergigante's design, it just looks badass since he is covered in spikes. And I also love his battle theme and his up-tempered battle theme. So ever since I went through World and Iceborne, Nergigante has become one of my all-time favourite monsters. And also he has made his grand return in Stories 2. He is pretty much my second best monster in Stories 2. And so let's move on to number 2. Raging Brauchydios, a variant of Brauchydios that has bonded with the Super Slime, surviving the bonding process, becoming bigger and stronger. Raging Brauchydios was first introduced in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and he is hands down one of the most hardest monsters in 4 Ultimate, and also one of the most best fights in Iceborne. Raging Brauchy is the best variant and also one of the most best monsters in the series. He is my most favourite brute wyvern and also one of my all-time favourites. Raging Brauchydios is just an awesome monster in general. I first fought Raging Brauchydios in 4 Ultimate, and he is one of the most hardest monsters in that game. And then I fought him in Iceborne and Generations Ultimate, and I gotta say, he is one of the most difficult and also one of the most fun monsters to fight. When he returned to Iceborne, his equipment defied the meta for a short time. His weapons have got high raw and also purple sharpness, which were on par with Safijiva weapons. But unfortunately, they got power creeped by Fatalis. And his armor is actually really good. If you paired Brauchydios with Teostra, you can get Master's Touch and also a lot of slots to work with. His fight in Iceborne is drastically different than it is in the older games. In the final area, he will block off the exits of the area so he cannot run away, so you have to fight him one-on-one, which makes the fight more intense. The only thing I don't like about this fight is the theme that they use. They remade this theme, but honestly, the original Brauchydios theme sounds way better. The only thing I suggest, if you want to experience Raging Brauchy in the older games, go play for Ultimate or Generations Ultimate. In those games, Raging Brauchy is a lot harder. Raging Brauchydios is number 2. But before we go to the obvious number 1, we've got a few monsters that did not make this list. Falcana, the Iceborne Elder Dragon. She was on my top 10 monsters from Iceborne, but unfortunately she's not one of my favourites out of Iceborne. So she was replaced with Comedios, that's why she's here. Gormagala, the endgame boss of 4 Ultimate. He was going to be on this list, but unfortunately I couldn't get any good footage of him, so I left him as an honourable mention, and I hope one day Gormagala returns. Grimclaw Tigerex. This one was hard, because I had to pick between him or Brute Tigerex, but in the end I chose Brute. Nergigante. He was in my top 10 monsters from the series, but I pretty much replaced him with Falsetrax, mainly because I find Nergigante a bit dull now. Don't get me wrong, I still love him, but I think Falsetrax is better. But I hope one day Nergigante returns. Shogun Senoga. He was in my top 10 monsters from Iceborne, but for this list I decided to replace him with Thunderlord Senoga, mainly because I find Thunderlord more fun. But I still love Stygian Senoga, hence why he is here. And so, let's move on to number 1. Eletron, the blazing black dragon, the endgame boss of Monsters to Try. Eletron is my most favorite monster in the series. He has now been on 3 of my monster lists. If you followed me for a while, you should know that I use Eletron as a mascot for this channel. Eletron was first introduced in Monsters to Try, and then he made his way into Generations Ultimate, and then Iceborne. When he came to Iceborne, Capcom has changed him up a bit, far different than he was in the older games. He now has 3 forms: Fire Active, Ice Active, and his true form, Dragon Active. He controls all the elements. When he's in Fire Active, he uses a large range of fire attacks, some brand new. When he's in Ice Active, he uses both ice and water attacks. When he's in Dragon Active, however, he can use both, and also electricity. When Eletron first came to Iceborne, he caused a bit of a stir in the Monster Hunter community, because people were moaning that he is too hard. Don't get me wrong, he is hard, but he is a black dragon. He is supposed to be hard. It got so bad that people started making petitions for him to be nerfed, which is quite unnecessary because the game tells you how to defeat him. So Eletron's gimmick is that it's elemental unstable. For Fire Active, you need to bring ice, which is his biggest weakness. And for Ice Active, you need to bring fire, same again. And that's all you need for him. You don't need to take any other element, and also don't take any blast weapons because it just doesn't help. So yeah, you need to take elemental weapons for Eletron, because if you do enough elemental damage to him, you will trip him and weaken him. I'll touch on this later on. Eletron has got an expansive moveset, but it is quite easy to learn, because Eletron has got recovery animations. It takes a bit of time to recharge some of his attacks, which gives you a lot of openings for you to punish him. When it comes to Eletron, your main focus is to break his horns, because his horns are the source of his powers, which only can be broken when he's in Dragon Active. Dragon Active is where he's at his most dangerous, because he can use every element in this form, but it is essential to get that horn break, which helps you in the long run in this fight. So, about getting those elemental trips. You need to get those trips to weaken his new ultimate attack, which is called Eschaton Judgment. Eschaton Judgment is Eletron's brand new ultimate move that he didn't have in the older games. What it does, he supercharges all of his elements, and then he releases it, vaporizing everything in the arena. If you're not careful, it can kill you in a matter of seconds. But you can weaken the state if you get 2 or 3 elemental trips, which will weaken it by a lot and you'll survive. Even by suppressing him once, you can live on 1 HP. Also, this is when his horns come into play. If you do not get the horn break, when he does Eschaton Judgment, he will change element. So say like, you was fighting in the fire active, but he never broke his horn. When he does his Eschaton Judgment, he will turn into ice active. And if you're using an ice weapon, it won't work on him, he'll be immune. So it is essential to get those horns broken, because if you don't, you will struggle. Eletron is hands down the best fight in Iceborne, and also the best assigned monster when it comes to its mechanic and also its fight. Overall, Eletron is my most favorite monster in the series. I love his design and also his battle theme. It is one of my personal favourites in the whole series. And I was glad when he came back to Iceborne. He has been my favourite ever since I've seen him in the trailer, and it probably won't change because Eletron left a big impact on me ever since I first fought him, and I hope one day Eletron will return in a future game. So these are my top 20 monsters from the series. This video took nearly 2 months to put together, since I have a lot of favourite monsters from the series, so the list was kinda difficult to make. But these are my top 20. Also, this is my longest monster list to date. I might do another list like this down the line once Sunbreak comes out, but I hope it won't be as long as this video. But until then, I'll catch you guys at the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, happy hunting!